What is the most dramatic act you have witnessed at a wedding? Last wedding I went, I complimented the celebrant, my cousin's brand new brother in law, on his speech, and we chatted for a bit. Of course, giving certain people a compliment means you're secretly confessing your deep, undying love for them. The celebrant was one of those people. He asked me to go back with him. I pointed out that he had a wife and I had a boyfriend. He said that his wife wouldn't mind. I said, "No, I'm all right, thanks." He then proceeded to grab my drunken hand and haul me across a field to where his wife was sitting. He explains the situation to his wife and then says, "So, are you up for joining us tonight?" The wife looks me up and down and says she doesn't mind. By this point, this horror show has gone on for long enough even for me, so I took my 30-years-old bum, ran back to the main gazebo, and hid behind my mum. 15 minutes later, he appears from nowhere, wife behind him, saying, "We've got a taxi, so we need to leave now." I said that I wasn't going. He grabbed my arm again and said, "Honestly, no need to be shy." My mum was sat there, watching the whole thing and laughing uncontrollably. I knew the guy wasn't going to carry me off in front of 100 people, so I didn't feel unsafe or anything. But boy, was I glad when the cha-cha slide came on and I could just peg it onto the dance floor. I feel like everyone knows at least one person like this. If you're nice to them, you're clearly hitting on them. This guy needs a good lesson on consent because grabbing someone and trying to bring them home with you is not okay. I'm glad nothing bad happened and we can laugh about it now, but people seriously need to learn boundaries. I saw a bride get ditched by her fiancé. She was getting a courthouse wedding and he never showed up, just left her there. She stood on the front yard of the courthouse for hours, waiting for him to show until someone tracked him down at his mom's, and he was laughing and talking about how pathetic he was able to make her. This is absolutely horrible. It takes a special kind of small, heartless person to ditch someone on their wedding day and then brag about causing them so much pain. I really hope that everyone around him saw the kind of person he is and cut ties with him. My mother-in-law was absolutely a psycho at our wedding during the planning. She got a ton of Botox right before the wedding, and it didn't have time to settle or whatever, so she looked very strange. She got so drunk at the reception and was acting so weird that everyone noticed she was mad we didn't serve cake and just did the restaurant's desserts. So she kept going around to random people saying, "Who doesn't serve cake at a wedding?" She hid in the bathroom crying during our first dance. She offered to pay for the photographer during the planning, which we declined, and she absolutely lost her shit about it. Turned out she thought if she paid for the photographer, she could exclude her ex-husband's partner from the photos. She lost it with my sister-in-law and demanded she not wear heels to the wedding because she didn't want her to be taller. For context, my mother-in-law is maybe 4 feet 11 inches, my sister-in-law is 5 feet 9 inches, so I think that ship sailed a long time ago. She also tried to convince my sister-in-law to wear a white dress. Don't worry, it's cream, to their cousin's wedding. We do love a good mother-in-law story. The last part makes me think her issue is with every wedding, not just yours. Don't you love when people can't be happy for others and have to make a scene wherever they go? I don't know what led up to it, but it came out that the groom had been sleeping with his own half-sister, and her baby was actually his, not from some mysterious boyfriend. There was a fist fight that I didn't witness, as it all happened before the ceremony was supposed to take place. Luckily, I was with the bride, and she literally got out and ran. Apparently, the groom was still expecting the "I do." I absolutely love the timing in these stories. What a blessing to find out just before getting married. Of course, it would have been better before spending thousands on a wedding, but hey, this still isn't the worst-case scenario. We have an infamous incident in my family. When I was 5, I was asked to be a flower girl in my mom's colleague's mother's second wedding. Yeah, I know. I didn't really know the family well for obvious reasons. Anyways, these folks were really into flaunting their money, so they held the rehearsal dinner and wedding at a very fancy hotel near our hometown. They were adamant that all wedding events were child-free, except I was allowed to attend the wedding on account of my being flower girl. Because of this, I was not allowed to rehearse. They expected that I would show up on the day and just know what to do. Naturally, it did not work out that way. Importantly, I was an extremely shy child. I did not like interacting with people I didn't know well. Still don't, TBH. So, When they plunked me down at the end of the aisle, put a basket in my hand, and told me to walk away from my mom into a crowd of 200 strangers towards a couple that I barely knew, I had a meltdown and ran in the other direction to hide. After the ceremony, the bride and her daughters, including my mom's colleague, pulled my mom aside and started yelling at her, telling her that she ruined the wedding by not making me obey better, that she should have taken more care to make me behave as they wanted on their family's special day. My mom was basically like, "You didn't let her practice. What did you expect to happen? She's not a prop." I think after that, their friendship never really recovered. Also, the marriage fell apart like 2 years later. I cannot say I'm surprised to hear this. It's incredible how people want children at weddings for the cute moments, but then lose it when they actually act like children. Honestly, she deserved it. And kudos to your mom for sticking up for you and not scolding you for being scared. It's not yours nor your mom's fault that they didn't prepare you properly. At my parents' wedding, before I was born, as they were leaving the church and everyone was standing outside and throwing confetti, one of my dad's female friends pulled the bust of my mom's dress outwards and threw confetti straight down inside it. Guess who my dad slept with for 11 years, roughly 6 months after my parents got divorced when I was 3? Well, she clearly wasn't there to support your mom, that's for sure. That kind of move was already crossing a boundary. Honestly, your mom didn't deserve to deal with such disrespect. I attended a wedding where someone else accidentally got married. A lovely, formal cocktail evening affair. But the groom had been a live-action role player, and they invited his LARP buddies. LARPers are not known for their ability or willingness to take social cues or control obnoxious behavior. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth mentioning. The bride had the good sense to put the LARPers in the furthest corner. 2 of these LARP friends had been in a long-term cohabitation relationship. Our state recognizes common law marriage. It goes into effect if you share financial accounts, live together, and acknowledge yourselves as married. Early on at the reception, this couple decides to start calling themselves married. He calls her his wife. Oh no. This happens in front of their old friend, another LARPer, who is also a divorce lawyer. And he's not sober. He makes a loud deal about how funny it is that they just got married at their friend's wedding, and there's nothing they can do about it because of the number of witnesses. That back corner becomes even more chaotic with the ad hoc extra celebration and loudly intoxicated arguments about legal validity. I was there as the date of a LARPer who was a groomsman and had only met the couple once. I was mortified for her and to be stuck at that table. I don't even think she came over to that table to greet guests, just the groom. This is honestly hilarious and horrifying at the same time. It's one thing to bring some chaos as a guest, but accidentally stealing the spotlight with an unplanned wedding? That's on a whole other level. Props to the bride for keeping her cool and putting them in the far corner. At my brother's wedding, during the maid of honor's speech, she said, "Sorry everyone, we'll be more organized for the bride's next wedding." My dad, who had paid for the wedding, walked out at that point. I mean, this was clearly meant as a joke. But wedding humor can be a slippery slope. If you ever give a wedding speech, make sure to choose your words carefully. At my siblings' wedding, my aunt insisted on being in every single picture. The photographer specifically asked for immediate family only. Bride, groom, siblings, and parents, after the groom had finished taking photos with his family. Guess who still tried to sneak into the pictures? I'd had enough by then, so I didn't move when she tried to push past me. Instead, I stood my ground and blocked her while everyone else got into place. Then, she tried to go around the group. We were on a small temporary stage with a backdrop, but I shifted slightly and unintentionally blocked her again. She attempted to squeeze through, lost her balance, and fell off the stage. I couldn't help but laugh. My mom gave me a talking to afterward, but even she laughed about it later. The best part? My aunt stayed seated after that and didn't try to join any more pictures unless specifically called. It still makes me smile, even if it wasn't my finest moment. I think it's always good to set boundaries with humor rather than resistance. Though I must admit, your aunt taking a step back was probably for the best. At my sister's wedding when I was 16, my now brother-in-law's dad gave a speech that went on for about 5 minutes. It was essentially a rant about being the divorced dad and all his complaints about the lack of contact he had with my brother-in-law as he grew up. It got pretty dark at times and was probably the longest 5 minutes anyone in the hall had ever experienced. No one really knows what his goal was with that speech, but it definitely explained a lot about why my brother-in-law doesn't have much contact with his dad, even now. I don't remember much of the speech myself, beyond what people have told me about it when it comes up now. At the time, I wasn't fully paying attention because I was stuck in my own head. My speech was next. I was 16, terrified of public speaking, and I wasn't even supposed to give a speech initially. I had written something relatively short and sweet that I was proud of. As the dad's speech dragged on, I kept thinking, oh God, it's so long. Why is it so long? Mine isn't anywhere near this long. Mine's probably terrible compared to this. Everyone is watching so intently. It must be good. God, there's so many people here. Overthinking. Later, I found out that everyone was watching so intensely because it was like a car crash. They just couldn't look away. Anyway, I went up after him, delivered my speech, and apparently it was very good. I still get compliments on it from extended family whenever I see them. I'm not sure how good it really was, though. It could have been the most basic, mid-tier thing in the world, and people still would have loved it, because if I hadn't done it, my brother-in-law's dad's speech would have been the last one of the night. Mine essentially gave everyone a better note to end on. It was a very easy act to follow. Wow, what a tough act to precede. Sounds like his speech was memorable for all the wrong reasons. Weddings are definitely not the place to air grievances like that. A bridesmaid got drunk and decided to go skinny dipping during the reception, which was held at a lake. A few guests had taken their shoes off and were dipping their toes in the water, but the bridesmaid was the only one actually swimming. By that time, most of the guests had left, but a few of the bride and groom's family members saw her and were uncomfortable. The bride was understandably upset, but chose not to make a scene. Those of us who knew the bridesmaid weren't surprised. She had a habit of getting drunk and exposing herself for attention. So, we just ignored it and stayed away from the lake. Yikes. That's definitely not the kind of entertainment people are expecting at a wedding reception. Good on the bride for keeping her cool. I didn't witness this myself, but we heard about it in the weeks after the wedding. My cousin spent the night before her wedding with her secret lover. Apparently, the couple had already decided to separate but chose to go through with the wedding since it was only a few weeks away. They kept it quiet, only telling very close family, so they wouldn't lose their deposits with caterers and could still receive wedding gifts. I personally think it's super hilarious, but many of our relatives didn't and still don't find it funny. That's definitely a bold move, and while it's hard not to laugh at the absurdity of it, I can see why it rubbed some people the wrong way. This whole situation feels like something out of a sitcom. When my small-town high school class of 2003 started its first wave of weddings, so about 18 years ago, there was one couple who had just broken up. Let's call them Lana and Chad. Lana had a tendency to break down crying during other people's weddings, lamenting that this was supposed to be her and Chad. This often caused a group of the bride's friends to leave the festivities to comfort a sobbing Lana in the bathroom or outside, taking the focus off the couple getting married. The irony, Lana and Chad's relationship wasn't even healthy to begin with. Their story started under questionable circumstances, and Chad had even proposed over the phone while drunk. It was doomed from the start. Even now, people in our small town talk about Lana's behavior and how much attention she drew during others' big days. Wow. It's one thing to have a tough time moving on, but weddings are the last place to make someone else's day about you. Hopefully, she found closure and did not ruin any more weddings. At a wedding, I met a woman and then introduced her to my then boyfriend. Literally, I said, "This is my boyfriend, name, he does X for a living." And she immediately right in front of me said, "Oh my gosh, your work is so important," with hearts in her eyes, and proceeded to hit on him for the entire rest of the night. I was floored. Her behavior got more outrageous as the night went on and she got drunker. Not much food was served at this wedding, but there was unlimited alcohol, and eventually knocked herself unconscious. If this was an AITA post, somebody would have confronted her, but most people were just uncomfortable, and we never heard from her again. I could have blown up her phone. Some people really don't have any boundaries, do they? It's wild how she went from making a simple compliment to completely ignoring you and flirting with your boyfriend right in front of you. All right, that's it for today's wedding stories. Weddings can bring out the best and the worst in people, and it's always fun to hear what drama happens behind the scenes. What's the craziest wedding story you've experienced or heard? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more fun content.